Welcome to Of Sound Mind and Spirit. I'm Shelly.
And I'm Lisa. We're sisters walking together on a journey of faith. We're not perfect.
We definitely don't have all the answers.
We're inviting you to walk with us as we explore ways we can better know and grow in our faith together.
Welcome back to another episode from Of Sound Mind and Spirit. This is Shelly.
And this is Lisa.
You know, wouldn't it be nice if there was somebody that could kind of help guide us along in hearing the will of God and discerning what we want to do with our life?
You mean like a coach?
Yeah, like somebody who could kind of like coach us through life, put us through our exercises.
Sign me up. I need that.
Well, that's great because I've invited a good friend of ours to come on the podcast today and talk to us about life coaching. Marge Steinhage Fenelon is an award-winning and best-selling author, international speaker, certified spiritual mentor, and professional life coach. Lisa, she's written several books on Marian devotion. I have quite a few of them, and Catholic spirituality. As a life coach, she is passionate about helping others grow personally and spiritually, partnering to set and achieve positive life goals. Her podcast, Simply Holy, airs on many popular podcast platforms. And you can learn more about Marge at margefenelon.com. Marge, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Oh, I
Yay!
love
Hi, Marge.
you two ladies. It's so much fun. And Shelly, you get an A+ on name pronunciation.
I give her all of the names.
At least yours is easier than Barb's.
Oh, this is true.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, our good friend Barb. I love her.
Yeah.
Marge, I wanted to kick this off by just asking the question that some of our listeners are probably wondering. What is life coaching?
Life coaches help people get unstuck. That's a very simplified explanation. But I'm going to, if you don't mind, I'm going to look at a chart that I keep on my website because I think this helps very much understand what life coaching is and how that's different from the other helping professions. Because there's some subtle differences, but then there's some big differences. What is life coaching? So the coach works with the client. It's a collaboration. And what we do together is we set an agenda that is set by the client, and then we go after goals that are also set by the client. So basically the coach is facilitating what the client already has inside him or her. And we're just getting things unstuck and opening up. We open up the client's mind to see possibilities that they may have never seen before, or possibilities they saw but X'd off because they thought, well, I could never do that. So we're opening up options and possibilities for the client. And I'm often asked, okay, so how is that different from, say, a counselor? Well, the counselors, they're giving clinical expertise. So they're facilitating a healing process. Coaches aren't healers, although there could be healing that takes place in that coaching process, but that's not our main objective. We're getting you unstuck. We're moving you forward. We're not looking back. We're looking ahead. And whereas a consultant, they're considered helping profession as well. Well, this is an expert that analyzes the problem, and they look at a project and they provide reports and recommendations. That's a consultant. This is what's going around here. Here's how you can fix it. I would love to have that actually for my writing some days. Come on over.
I love the way you describe that, Marge, as helping you to get unstuck. Because I think a lot of women, and I'll say our age, Lisa and I, we're in the transition of life and we get stuck and we don't know where to go next, or maybe we've changed jobs or left a job, or in Lisa's case, the kids are all moving out of the house and going off to college. What next? And she and I've had a lot of conversations like, what next?
Yeah.
And so I love that there is a profession that is able to advertise and say, I'm going to help you get unstuck.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I'm often asked, I just came from a conference this past weekend, and I think every other person asked me, so what's the difference between a coach, what you're doing, and a spiritual director? I get that one all the time. And there's some overlap because a spiritual director does collaborate with the client, but the spiritual director is a little bit, it's a very different angle. So they're praying together, which I do pray with my clients. But the director, I think about the title, direct, they direct. So here are some, these are books I think you should read. And oftentimes a spiritual director is also a confessor. It's a very different kind of process. It's more focusing on, let's see, how could I explain that? Working yourself out of sinful behavior. It's not always the purpose of spiritual direction, but that definitely is a main component. Where a coach, we're all sinners. That's not my focus. My focus is, like you said, where are you stuck? Where do you think you're stuck? How do you think you might be able to get unstuck? What possibilities do you see? And sometimes as a coach, I'll make very subtle suggestions only with the permission of the client. If I'm seeing something, a pattern or something that the client said but didn't necessarily hear themselves say. And that's the beauty of life coaching, because when you're working with a coach, 90% of the conversation is the client. I'm listening as a coach, and I'm listening for cues. I'm listening for, as I said, patterns. I'm listening for personality quirks that may be stopping this person. So in my case, with my life coaching, I have just a fetish for working with the temperaments. Ever since I was a teenager, I have done this. When I first worked with my very first spiritual director, and he went through the temperaments with me and helped me to discern my temperament, and then helped me to understand how does that affect me and my relationship with others. And when I became married, then to assess or talk with my spouse about his temperament and my children. I'll give you a definition of temperament in a second, but then the temperaments of my children. When you know someone's temperament, when you know your own and you know someone else's, or at least you get an idea of the various temperaments, what you are seeing there are patterns of behavior, of reactions to certain circumstances. So there are 4 main temperaments. You can look at my website, but I won't get into the nuts and bolts of each of the temperament. That's not important right now. What's important is that everyone has a God-given temperament. Usually you have a primary and a secondary. 2 of those temperaments tend to be more extroverted and 2 tend to be more introverted.
Okay.
All right. So basically what you're seeing is, okay, so I can use myself as an example. I am sanguine and choleric. So just a very brief, sanguine is we love people. We love to please. We love to please people. Cholerics they're drawn to action. They are movers and shakers, so to speak. They are the people who they can be bossy. And I'm speaking of myself. I so am. But when I understand that about myself, the sanguines are the shiny penny people, excuse me. And that's me entirely. A new project. Oh my gosh, that sounds like, that's so much fun. I'm on board. And then I get myself
I think you've identified Shelly and I too.
I'm going to get myself into trouble. Like, oh my gosh, I took on too much. Well, dang.
Oh, that sounds familiar.
Like you're like squirrel.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So understanding your temperament, now I realize, okay, sanguine Marge, watch out, because here comes the tiny penny. Think hard about this, and you're going to want to dig in and take a charge because you have that choleric in you. So you see how that works. And so there's a book by Art and Lorraine Bennett, The Temperament God Gave You. And it's an amazing book if anybody wants to look that up. But I actually wrote to Sophia Press, Institute Press, and I said, you know what? They have an assessment in the back of their book. Do you think the Bennetts would allow me to lift that out of the book and put it into a form and use that in my life coaching if I give them credit and then make sure that people know that it came from their book. And they said, absolutely. So I have the
Oh,
permission of
I
the
love that.
Bennetts to use that assessment in my coaching. And then also they were so generous. They said, well, if you ever have any questions, just let us know. We'd be happy to
Yeah.
answer.
Marge, I actually have seen that before in a game, a card game,
Really?
kind of like apples to
Yeah.
apples. There's one out there called Know Thyself, the game of
Oh,
I'm
temperaments,
writing
and I
that
never
down.
put the two together until you started talking, and I'm sitting here
that's
going, "Wait,
awesome.
sanguine, choleric, I know this. This is the game we play in the house where you get the cards, like apples to
Yeah.
apples, and then you turn over and you've got a situation, and you have to or oh, I know it. You go person to person. So like first it's this person, and everybody plays the card in their hand, like who they think this person, a temperament that they see in that person, and you collect cards. And I forget how you win and that sort of thing,
Yeah.
but it's
Oh,
fantastic because when our family plays, we played it so much we already know who's getting which color card, so to speak. So we're always like, hang on, I got to shuffle. I don't have enough cards for Dad in here.
Marge,
You
I
would love
love
it.
oh, I definitely have to look that up because that does sound
Mhm,
like so much fun. That's the premise. Anyway, this is what a coach does. Where are you now? Where do you want to be?
mhm.
We're the people who make dreams come alive.
I love the idea of as a middle-aged woman, I think one way we get stuck is that we think we should already have ourselves figured out. We should know,
Mhm.
like we've been ourselves for a while, so we should be able to do all the things we want to do when we want to do them in a way that we want to do them. And life just doesn't work that way. We're constantly changing seasons and experiences and emotions, and don't get me started on the whole perimenopausal menopausal stuff that happens that throws your life in a wrench, and the kids, and
Yeah.
so I love that you bring up getting to know yourself
Mhm.
as something that's really important,
Yes.
because gosh, I think that on the one hand we give ourselves such a hard time
Mhm.
for things we think we should be doing. And what you're saying is we have to get to know ourselves, who we are right now,
Exactly.
in order to move forward and to do the things that we are called to do.
Exactly. I mean, it would be as if one of the introverted temperaments set a goal of being a jazz singer.
Yeah.
This isn't realistic. Maybe there's a different way to be involved with jazz music, but that's not a realistic goal when you think about who you are and what are your
Okay.
inclinations. Now I do want to pretext that you can overcome once you know your temperament. You definitely could
Hmm.
overcome both the ups and downs. So,
Okay.
an introvert can learn to be extroverted in certain situations. I don't want to scare people into thinking, "Oh no, I'm going to be in this little box, and that's where I'm going to be for the rest of my life." That's not true. And that's part of the coach's job is to find out, okay,
Hmm.
if you really, really, really want that goal, so
Hmm.
what do you think you can do in terms of your temperament to help move you toward that goal? What can you do with that? Because
Okay.
every temperament has its ups and downs.
Hmm.
Um, and so when people come to me for coaching, normally the first one of the first things I like to do then is to give that temperaments assessment if they're interested and
Hmm.
if they're willing, and then from there, that's where I sit down and say, where do you want to go? Where do you want to
Hmm.
go? Where are you stuck? And we
Hmm.
just go from there. And a lot of times someone will say, I always open every coaching session with, what would you like to talk about today? And so many times we'll start off with something that the client thought they wanted to talk about, but the spirit takes over and then something else surfaces. And so an adept coach will
Ah.
pick up on that and follow
Hmm.
along with that. And that's part of the one of the few times I'll intervene where somebody will say something and I can tell there was a lot of emotion right there, whatever the emotion is. Let's say it's some deep sadness, but they think they have to stick to that first question or first idea that they wanted to talk about. I'll say, hey, can we hang on it 1 second? But when you said such and such, I could visibly see, because usually I do video. It's all online. I do video. I'll do audio only. I'll do a phone call. But anyway, I sensed that there was some significant sadness there. Would you like to revisit that? What is it? made you so sad? It's okay to segue, but for me, it's such an honor to accompany someone along this path. The fact that they entrust to me their dreams and goals is just phenomenal. And I just love seeing when a client gets to that goal or the light bulb goes on and they see something that they had never seen before, and you just see their face light up and you just know they got it and they're ready to move on. And so it's a privilege. I really love it. I know that life coaching, even until recently, has had kind of a stigma attached to it, because in the beginning years of life coaching, I'm talking about 20 some years ago, and still today, there are some life coaches who come across with this very wacky spirituality, or they'll call themselves a spiritual coach.
Okay.
I want to caution the listeners, be wary of that. Make sure you know what is their faith background, what is their training, and what are they about. You can usually tell just looking at their websites, but if you really are still interested in this person, I offer free inquiry calls, and so should every coach. Do an inquiry call and see if you can feel that out, because this new age stuff is very dangerous. But if you have a good life coach, particularly, I would advocate Christian. Catholic would be even better. There's a number of us who are strictly Catholic. Check that out. Look for those people. And then you know that however they are facilitating your conversations is going to be in a godly way, in a solid, faith-filled way.
So that's a good warning, because
Yeah.
I'm assuming there's a lot of vulnerability and trust involved, and you want to make sure you're getting help and not manipulated by somebody who you weren't expecting.
Exactly.
So that's a very, very good warning.
Yeah. And there's so many good ones out there. We don't need the bad ones.
That's good.
Marge, that does lead to the question, well, how does somebody identify a life coach? Is there like a website people go to, or do they hear about it through people like yourself coming on and talking?
A little of both. There are directories online for Catholic coaches. You can even just Google life coach, Catholic life coach, and generally various names will pop up. I actually prefer word of mouth. Ask around, because coaching is becoming so popular that I would be very surprised if you bumped into someone who hadn't at least heard of life coaching, if not a specific life coach. So that's where I would go. And again, like I said, you just know, look at the person's info and have a conversation with the person, right away. And how do you find out if it's a good match? By that initial call. Ask for an initial call. It's like any other relationship. You can tell, even if it's the best ever life coach, if the personalities just aren't quite syncing, that's not a good idea. And that's not an insult to the coach. It just means that their personality can fit a little better maybe with someone else's personality, or vice versa. I've had, it was not quite the same as the personality thing, but I've had clients, one in particular, where I sensed that this person really needed therapy and not so much life coaching. And we're trained for that. We're trained in these various situations. And so I gently suggested, you think that would be a good option? Once you get through that, then maybe we can, come back and we can continue life coaching. She was actually very grateful. I think she was afraid to admit it to herself.
So you, as the life coach, were able to help her get unstuck and seek the professional help she needed.
Exactly. And we're, like I said, we're trained to watch out for that, because our best interest is the client, and we want to make sure that we're keeping them spiritually and emotionally and mentally safe. You don't want to coach someone who has different kinds of things they need to be working on, because you can actually do some damage there, and we don't want to damage anyone.
Marge, what's the average time that somebody usually works with a life coach?
It's across the board, but basically the recommended amount of time is give it 3 months. Give it 3 months, 3 to 4 times a month, because it takes time to do just one coaching session. You don't really accomplish much. You're getting to know each other. By the time that first coaching session is done, you've only gotten to the point of figuring out what's got them stuck. So it's kind of like, oh, I know how you're stuck. See you later. It just does not fly. So 3 months at least. And so you could go anywhere from 3 months to 6 months to years, because there's always something different that you can be coaching about. Simple things like trying to figure out someone who's going to lead a retreat. They just can't figure out, well, how do I, what should I include and how should I go about this? A coach is perfect for that. Let's talk about it. What do you think should happen in a perfect world? What would happen at this retreat? And then we work through the various steps. So the coaching relationship could go on for a very long time, but it doesn't have to. But I would say at least 3 months.
Then I'm not going to ask your rates, but I'm assuming this is a paid coaching.
Yes.
And do they pay per visit? Do they pay per month? Or, is there an agreed upon length of time? Like you said, 3 months? How do y'all set your fees?
Every coach is a little bit different. I think the standard and what I use is we work out a contract for a 3-month package. So there's a fee for the 3 months, and I ask for half up front, and then at the end of the 3 months, the remainder. If they want to continue, then we do another 3-month contract. And the contract is very basic, but it just keeps myself and everybody on the up and up, so we're very clear about what this is all going to entail.
Oh, I like that. I can imagine somebody kind of going, well, that sounds nice, but, how does that work?
And the other thing is that if the client doesn't have a vested interest, they tend to not take it as seriously. And I've seen this where, it's, if they're not investing in it, not only time, but even some financially, you feel more obligated to make the most of those sessions if you're paying for it.
Oh, and how long is a session?
Mine, I always say 45 minutes, but I hate to cut off a client. I hate to do that. So mine usually end up about an hour. But 45 minutes, after 45 minutes, generally you're feeling that lull, and it's kind of like you're winding down. You just naturally feel like you're winding down. But as I said, often I'll let it go the whole hour, and I don't mind that, because if there's something there, well, sorry, your time's up, and then this is in the middle of something really important, like, oh,
right.
Well, and I expect, like anything else, there's some are longer than others because you would have more to discuss, and knowing you would ask the questions, I think you said, and you would ask a question that might generate more content than you initially expected.
Yeah.
And another days it might be like, well, no, I did what you suggested, or I did what we discussed last time, and what's next, kind of thing, and which is another form of being stuck.
Yeah.
So do most people do they come with a specific issue, or is it more of a general, my life is just, I need to find my direction?
I've had both. Okay. I've had both. So there are folks who, maybe as I mentioned before, there's a project or something where they cannot get this figured out. But then there's also those who are saying there's just something not right and I'm not sure what it is. So I've had both of those. And I wouldn't, is one the majority? I don't really think so at this point. It might be that they can sense that something's not right about a relationship, or about, as you mentioned, life transitions and things like that. The kids all just moved out. Now we're empty nesters, and I'm not sure how to deal with this. Could be something like that. But it doesn't take long, I think, to figure out or help the client figure out exactly what it is that needs addressing, even if they come with a general not feeling right.
Yeah. Shelly's looking at me and smiling, like empty nesting. The problem is, at this point, I'm looking forward to it, but we'll see what happens when it actually happens, right?
Mom and Dad used to joke that they would either change the locks or they would move and forget to tell us the forwarding address.
Yeah.
Well, Marge, is there anything else that you would like to add about life coaching that you think our listeners should know?
Yes. I think if you're serious about your own personal and spiritual growth, consider life coaching. And as I said in the beginning, spiritual directors are awesome. They have their purpose. But if you're just looking, and it's not just, but if you're looking to move ahead in your spiritual growth, a life coach can be so helpful, so very instrumental in helping you figure out where you need to go. And that's what I love most about the life coaching, because the client has it in them. God's right there inside of them. They just need to figure out what is inside them. For me, it's just a beautiful process.
I love that. I think it's something, and you mentioned it's been around for a while, but it's something that I'm only more recently becoming aware of and hearing about. And so that was one of the reasons we really wanted to have you on, because I think there's a lot of us who are kind of waking up to this idea of, how do we resolve some of the struggle that we're having? Is it therapy? Is it, so life coaching? That's kind of a new thing for me. So I'm really thankful that you came on and we can learn more about it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm delighted. And business coaching has been around for a long time. And I think people get that a little confused because they can't figure out, so then was a life coach. But the life coaching, you're right, it's fairly new in terms of being well known.
Well, I think we're mostly familiar with sports coaching. Someone who helps your young athlete get stronger and better in the game. And so it makes sense that there would be a life coach, and with you, someone of the faith who is Catholic and Christian and can do that with God at the forefront. So that's fantastic. Now, where could our listeners look you up online, Marge?
They can look me up on margefenelon.com. I've got all my coaching information there, and you can sign up for it if you want to inquiry call. You can register right there on the website.
And I'll add, they can also find your publications and your social media presence and your podcast, Simply Holy. So
Yes. And if you
toot your horn.
If you aren't familiar with Marge, check out her books. She is a very accomplished author.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Now, Marge, here on Sound, Mind, and Spirit, because Lisa and I are sisters, we always ask our guests, do you have a sister? And if you do you have a story you would like to share about your sister?
I do. I have two sisters, and I'm the baby of the family. My sisters are 7 and 9 years older than I am, and then my brother is 11 years older than I am. But the sister closest to me, that's 7 years my senior. I like to tell her that you're my senior. Anyway, we cannot sit in mass together without cracking up. I don't know what it is. It's awful. And I remember one time she had come home from college, and it was really exciting. My parents all excited because the whole family gets to go to Christmas mass, and we're sitting there and trying not to look at each other because we just know what's going to happen. She's right next to me, and I'm thinking, I gotta look. And I look over, and she's laughing, she's jerking up and down, and then it's got me going. So then I can hardly, I'm almost at the giggle point. And my mother looks over. Now, mind you, we are college age young ladies, you'd think. My mother looks over and gives this look. It was just daggers. And she takes the back of her hand, just like when we were little kids. And she was on to my sister was to my right, my mom was to my left, and just whats us. And then we all realized how ridiculous that must have just looked. Laughing all the more.
Wasn't even that middle finger subtle thump on the back of the head. She actually did the whole arm movement. Woo!
Irritated, and rightfully so. We were just naughty. It was absolutely naughty. But we just couldn't help it. And it was just to be, the message sent there was so clear. You guys are acting like you're 5 years old. So I'm going to treat you like you're 5 years old. And I'm going to whop you so that you wake up and pay attention, stop your laughing, which obviously. So
if memory serves, if you were 5, then she would be 12. So, so she was the one who should know better.
Something in between when you're with someone who's older than you.
No, I've got a large age gap, and I'm actually picturing my youngest with his next older sibling, and you're right, they cannot sit together at mass, not at all. It's a thumb war or the holding hands during the Our Father, and next thing you know, they're trying to out-squeeze each other's hands, and I wish I had your mom's, dagger stare, because I'm just like, "What are you doing? Stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it." Oh. Yeah, okay, Marge, our last question for you in closing is, who's your go-to saint these days?
Well, it's always the Blessed Mother, but I understand when people say saint, they're thinking more of other saints, and I have to say Saint Joseph. In the
Oh,
last
Mhm.
year, he has done such amazing things for our family, and I have felt his care so strongly. And it just started with, I think it might have been a homily or a book I read where it's like, wow, I don't think I really know Saint Joseph. So I started asking him, hey, can you introduce yourself to me? Can you, like, I hardly know you and you're so important. And it just grew from there. So my go-to is Saint Joseph, and just for my sons and my husband, but for all of us, for our whole family, and my particular needs with my work. Yeah, Saint Joseph.
mhm.
I like that.
I love the image that it brought to mind of even for couples, for married spouses,
Mhm.
and, so often you say Saint Joseph and Mother Mary, and you think Holy Family, but if you remove I say it like this, if you remove Christ, but you've got this beautiful example of
Yeah.
respectful, reverent married love.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah,
Exactly.
that's great. Okay. Well, March, thank you so much for being on here today. It's been a real pleasure and a privilege. So, and I want to encourage all of our listeners to go and look her up
Mhm.
and consider whether life coaching is something that is calling to you. Sign up for some of her information and see what she can offer.
And if you're feeling guilty that maybe you can't take the time out for yourself, go back and listen to our episode. Stop feeling guilty for self-care, because life coaching is most definitely self-care, and it's something that we should grow and learn and take care of ourselves so that we can do what we're called to do. Thank you,
You're
Marge.
welcome. Thanks for the invite. It's been fun.
It's always a pleasure talking to you.
All right. Thanks for listening. We will see you next week.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.